Respected, he left you for someone else. And right now it feels like your entire world has been shaken. But what if the greatest mistake he ever made becomes the greatest opportunity you ever receive? Stay with me, because today you are going to discover why the moment he walked away was not the end of your story. It was the beginning of your transformation. The day someone leaves you for another person feels different from every other kind of heartbreak. It is not just rejection, it is replacement. And replacement cuts deeper, because when someone breaks up with you, you can tell yourself that the relationship simply did not work. You can tell yourself that two people grew apart. You can tell yourself that life happened. But when they leave you for someone else, your mind immediately begins asking questions that steal your peace. What does she have that I don't? Why wasn't I enough? Was everything we shared a lie? Did our memories mean nothing? And before you realize it, you are no longer grieving the relationship. You are questioning your worth. That is where the real damage begins, because heartbreak can heal. But when heartbreak turns into self-doubt, it creates wounds that follow you everywhere. I want to tell you a story. Not because stories are entertaining, but because stories reveal truths we often cannot see inside our own lives. A woman named Rachel once believed she had found her forever person. For 6 years, she invested everything into her relationship. She showed up when things were difficult. She supported his dreams. She stood beside him during financial struggles. She celebrated his victories. She loved him through seasons when nobody else would. When he felt lost, she encouraged him. When he doubted himself, she reminded him of his value. When he wanted to quit, she helped him keep going. Rachel wasn't perfect. Nobody is. But she loved sincerely, and she believed that sincerity would be enough. Then one afternoon, her entire world changed. She noticed his behavior becoming different. The phone calls became shorter. The messages became colder. The affection disappeared. The excitement faded. And the connection that once felt effortless suddenly felt forced. At first, she blamed stress, then work, then life. She made excuses because sometimes the heart protects itself from painful truths. But eventually the truth arrived anyway. He had met someone else. And one day he sat across from her and said words she would never forget. I think I've found someone who makes me happier. Imagine hearing that from the person you gave your heart to. Imagine hearing that after years of loyalty. Imagine hearing that after sacrificing pieces of yourself to build a future together. Rachel felt something break inside her, not because she lost him, but because she lost the version of herself that believed love was safe. For weeks she barely slept. She replayed every conversation, every argument, every memory, every moment, searching for answers, searching for mistakes, searching for reasons. But pain has a way of creating illusions. When we are hurting, we often assume that if someone leaves, it means someone else was better. That is rarely true. And this is the first lesson I need every person listening today to understand. People do not always leave because they found something better. Sometimes they leave because they are chasing something easier. There is a difference. Something better requires wisdom. Something easier requires impulse. Many people mistake excitement for compatibility. They mistake attention for connection. They mistake novelty for love. And because of that, they walk away from valuable things while chasing temporary feelings. The new relationship feels exciting because it is new. There are no shared disappointments, no difficult conversations, no accumulated frustrations, no responsibilities. Everything feels light. Everything feels easy. Everything feels perfect. But perfection is often an illusion that exists before reality arrives. The problem is that when someone leaves you for another person, you don't get to see that reality. You only seek appears to be happiness, and appearances can be dangerous. Rachel spent months watching social media. She watched pictures. She watched updates. She watched smiles. And every image felt like another knife in her heart, because from the outside, it looked like he had upgraded his life. It looked like she was thriving while Rachel was suffering. It looked like the universe had rewarded betrayal. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever looked at someone's life after they hurt you and wondered why they seemed perfectly fine while you were carrying the pain? That feeling can consume you. It can make you bitter. It can make you angry. It can make you obsessed with proving your worth. And that is exactly where many people make a mistake. Because after being left for someone else, their entire focus shifts toward one goal: getting them back, making them regret leaving, showing them what they lost. And while that reaction is understandable, it is also dangerous, because your healing cannot depend on someone else's regret. Think about that. If your happiness depends on another person realizing their mistake, then you are still giving them control over your life. You are still allowing them to determine your value. You are still waiting for permission to feel worthy. And worthy people do not wait for permission. Rachel almost fell into that trap. She wanted revenge, not loud revenge, not dramatic revenge, the quiet kind, the kind where she imagined him returning and begging for another chance, the kind where she imagined finally rejecting him, the kind where she imagined proving that she had become better without him. But one evening, something happened that changed everything. She was sitting alone in her apartment. The television was on, but she wasn't watching. Her phone was in her hand. She was scrolling through old photographs, reliving memories, torturing herself. And suddenly she noticed something. Every picture contained a version of herself she barely recognized. A woman whose happiness depended entirely on whether someone loved her. A woman who measured her value through another person's attention. A woman who forgot that she existed before the relationship. And that realization hit her harder than the breakup itself, because she finally understood something. She had spent so much time trying to keep someone in her life that she stopped building her own. That moment became a turning point. Not because the pain disappeared, the pain was still there. Not because she suddenly stopped caring, she still cared deeply. But for the first time, she asked a different question. Instead of asking, why wasn't I enough for him? She asked, why did I forget I was enough for myself? That question changed everything. Because healing begins when the focus returns to you. Not your ex, not the new person, not the relationship. You, the person who still has dreams, the person who still has value, the person who still has a future, the person who still deserves happiness. Most people never realize this. They spend years trying to understand the person who left, analyzing behavior, searching for explanations, looking for closure, when the real breakthrough comes from understanding themselves. You see, the goal is not to figure out why someone abandoned you. The goal is to remember why you should never abandon yourself. And that is exactly where Rachel's journey truly began. Because the moment she stopped chasing answers from him, she started discovering strength within herself. A strength she didn't know existed. A strength that had been hidden beneath heartbreak. A strength that would eventually transform every area of her life. But transformation never begins with confidence. It begins with a decision. A decision to stop making your pain your identity. A decision to stop allowing betrayal to define your future. A decision to believe that one person's choice does not determine your worth. And for Rachel, that decision was about to lead her down a path she never expected. A path that would eventually reveal why some relationships that begin with excitement often collapse under the weight of reality. And why the people who leave are not always as happy as they appear. Because sometimes what looks like a beautiful beginning is the start of an ending nobody sees coming. For the first few weeks after Rachel made that decision, nothing magical happened. She did not wake up one morning feeling healed. She did not suddenly stop thinking about him. She did not become stronger overnight. In fact, some days felt worse. Because when you stop distracting yourself, you finally face the emotions you have been avoiding. And emotions demand to be felt before they can be released. Many people think healing is about forgetting. It is not. Healing is remembering without breaking. Healing is looking at the past and no longer allowing it to control your future. Rachel learned this lesson one painful day at a time. She started spending less time checking his social media. Then she stopped altogether, not because she no longer cared, but because she realized every visit was reopening a wound she was trying to close. Every picture she viewed became another comparison. Every update became another opportunity to question herself. And comparison is one of the fastest ways to destroy your peace. You see, when someone leaves you for another person, your mind naturally creates a competition. You compare your appearance, your personality, your accomplishments, your value. But love was never supposed to be a competition. The moment you start comparing yourself to someone else, you stop appreciating who you are. Rachel slowly began rebuilding parts of her life she had neglected. She joined a fitness class, not because she wanted revenge, not because she wanted him back, but because she wanted to feel strong again. She started reading books she had ignored for years. She reconnected with old friends. She traveled to places she had always wanted to visit. Little by little, she stopped waiting for life to happen. She started participating in it, and something fascinating began to occur. The more she focused on her own growth, the less power the breakup held over her. The memories still existed, but they no longer controlled her emotions. The pain still appeared, but it no longer defined her identity. And this is where many people misunderstand what happens after heartbreak. They think the goal is to stop feeling. The real goal is to stop living in reaction to what happened. There is a huge difference, because when you live in reaction, your ex is still controlling your life. Everything you do becomes connected to them. Every achievement is for them to see. Every success is for them to notice. Every improvement is for them to regret losing. That is not freedom. Freedom arrives when your growth belongs to you, when your happiness belongs to you, when your future belongs to you. Several months passed, and then something unexpected happened. Rachel ran into a mutual friend. During their conversation, his name came up. At first, her heart raced. Old emotions returned. Old memories resurfaced. But then the friend casually mentioned something surprising. Things were not as perfect as they appeared. The new relationship was struggling. Arguments had become frequent. Tension had replaced excitement. The connection that once looked effortless was becoming complicated. Rachel was shocked, not because she wanted him to suffer, but because reality was finally appearing. The perfect picture she had imagined was cracking. And suddenly she understood something powerful. Every relationship eventually reaches a stage where excitement fades and character takes over. At the beginning, attraction carries the relationship. Later, maturity must carry it. At the beginning, chemistry creates momentum. Later, commitment creates stability. At the beginning, everything feels easy. Later, effort becomes necessary. The problem is that many people fall in love with beginnings, but they are not prepared for what comes after. They chase butterflies. They chase novelty. They chase excitement. And when reality arrives, they feel disappointed. What they fail to understand is that every relationship eventually becomes real. No matter how exciting the start may be, no matter how attractive the person may seem, no matter how perfect everything appears, reality always arrives, and reality asks difficult questions. Can you communicate? Can you forgive? Can you grow together? Can you stay when life becomes difficult? Can you choose love when emotions fluctuate? Those questions determine the future of a relationship, not attraction, not excitement, not temporary feelings. Rachel began seeing the situation differently. For months, she had assumed he was living a dream, but now she realized something. People often leave one set of problems only to discover another set waiting for them. Because no relationship is free from challenges. The person changes, the location changes, the circumstances change, but human nature remains the same. Every relationship requires work. Every relationship faces difficulties. Every relationship eventually reveals flaws. That realization freed her from a burden she had been carrying, the burden of believing she had been replaced by perfection, because perfection does not exist, not in relationships, not in people, not in life. And when you finally understand that, you stop viewing yourself as the loser in someone else's story. You start recognizing that your story is still being written. One evening, Rachel was sitting with her grandmother, a woman whose wisdom came not from books, but from decades of experience. As they talked, Rachel shared everything: the heartbreak, the betrayal, the questions, the fears. Her grandmother listened quietly. Then she said something Rachel would never forget. She said, "Sometimes God removes people from your life because he knows where they are taking you." Rachel sat silently. Her grandmother continued. She said, "The pain comes from losing what you wanted. But years later, gratitude often comes from not getting it." Those words stayed with her because she realized she had been viewing the breakup as a punishment. What if it was preparation? What if losing him was protecting her from a future she could not yet see? What if the ending she feared was actually a redirection? Life has a strange way of revealing answers later. Not immediately, not when we demand them, but eventually. Many people listening right now are still holding on to someone who walked away, not because they were right for you, but because you imagined a future with them. And losing that future hurts. Sometimes you are grieving a dream more than a person. You are grieving the wedding you imagined, the family you imagined, the life you imagined, the version of tomorrow you thought was guaranteed. But life does not end when a dream changes. Sometimes a better dream begins. Rachel slowly stopped asking whether he would come back and started asking who she was becoming. That shift changed everything. Because the most powerful question after heartbreak is not, will they regret losing me? The most powerful question is, what kind of person will I become because of this experience? Will you become bitter or wiser? Will you become angry or stronger? Will you become broken or transformed? Pain always gives us a choice, not about what happened, but about who we become afterward. And Rachel chose growth. She chose healing. She chose herself. What she did not know was that somewhere in another part of the city, the man who left her was beginning to face truths of his own. Truths that many people never expect. Truths about regret. Truths about consequences. Truths about the difference between chasing happiness and creating it. Because while Rachel was rebuilding her life, he was about to discover that running towards something new does not automatically solve the problems you carry within yourself. And when that realization finally arrived, it would change everything. Months had passed. The seasons changed. The pain that once felt unbearable had become quieter, not gone, but quieter. Rachel no longer woke up every morning thinking about him. She no longer spent hours wondering what he was doing. She no longer replayed old conversations searching for hidden meanings. For the first time in a long time, she was beginning to feel something she thought she had lost forever. Peace, not excitement, not revenge, not validation. Peace. And peace is one of the most valuable things a person can possess. Because when your heart finally becomes calm, you stop making decisions from pain. You start making decisions from wisdom. What Rachel didn't know was that while she was learning how to live again, the man who left her was learning something very different. He was learning that escaping a relationship is much easier than escaping yourself. At first, everything had felt exactly as he imagined. The new relationship was exciting. There were no old arguments, no painful memories, no complicated history. Every conversation felt fresh. Every date felt exciting. Every moment felt effortless. He convinced himself he had made the right decision. In his mind, he had chosen happiness. But life has a way of testing our decisions. Not immediately, but eventually. Because eventually the honeymoon phase ends. Eventually the excitement becomes ordinary. Eventually two people begin seeing each other clearly. Not the polished version, not the exciting version, the real version. And that is where many relationships face their greatest challenge. You see, attraction can bring two people together, but character determines whether they stay together. As time passed, he started noticing things he had ignored before. Small disagreements became larger. Misunderstandings became more frequent. Expectations started colliding. The relationship that once felt effortless now required work. And work was exactly what he had been trying to avoid. One night after a particularly difficult argument, he sat alone in his car. The silence felt heavy. For the first time in months, he thought about Rachel. Not because he stopped caring about the new relationship, but because reality had finally arrived, and reality has a strange way of forcing comparisons.